into your Geoscope for the solar eclipse in Cancer, which happens on the 21st of June 2020. So I have had a quartz crystal on the cast just to clear the energies. So let's get into your reading. So just to say that I will be doing some personal forecasts, astrological ones, for my newsletter subscribers. So if that's something that you're interested in, then do go to my website and sign up to my newsletter. It's absolutely free, and you'll get access to my video forecasts and a whole lot of other things as well. So yes, the geomancy I love. I think it goes very well with a forecast for an astrological forecast. The two things are closely aligned, but geomancy just allows us to kind of drill down into get into a bit more detail, so a bit more information about 3D types of issues or scenarios that are likely to be activated by the solar eclipse, which begins a fresh 6-month cycle for the collective at the solstice. So I just want to make sure that I shuffle really well. Okay. Right, I think that's looking good. Let's cut the cards. Okay, so first up we've got Populace. Now I have to say this is the first reading that I've done so far where we haven't had Letitia in the first house, so a definite switch perhaps to to more sort of solar issues. But interestingly, we've got the moon in Cancer in your first house. Now this for you is the house of Leo, so the solar eclipse will actually happen in your 12th house. So it's kind of interesting that we're getting this lunar energy, this Cancerian energy in your first house. So Populace is really about groups or crowds. It's the moon in the sense of the collective. So this is the sort of collective hive mind, if you like. It can also be about being in situations where you are part of a group of people. So it could be part of a particular congregation. It could be being at a football stadium amongst a mass of people. It could simply be in the sense of identifying with your humanity, that you're part of the human race, but on some level there's you identifying more with the group as opposed to the individual, which I have to say for Leo is quite unusual, because the sun is quite a singular, normally an individual who stands apart from the crowd, sometimes because of their charisma and their leadership abilities, but Leos tend to see themselves as leaders or individuals as opposed to just one of the crowd. So it's interesting that we're getting this in your first house. So next up we've got Carcer. Now this is Saturn in the sign of Capricorn, which is its earth placement, its earth rulership. And Carcer in the 4th house speaks of restriction or limitations when it comes to family, home, where you live, your domestic setup, as well as also perhaps things that you inherit, so things that could come down through your bloodline or your genetics that might predispose you to either it's like a disability or just prevents you from being able to function fully. So it's interesting that we got it in your 4th house. It could be that that there is some kind of restriction or limitation to do with your domestic situation. So lockdown is one very literal example, but it could also be looking after sort of elderly parents. I mean, after we're talking about Saturn and Capricorn, and these are associated with old age. It could be that you finding that the space that you live in currently is too small, so you feel very restricted or kind of hemmed in, and you long to kind of get out. And it could also be that you're missing being able to kind of congregate with groups of other people, which is one of the main features of lockdown. There's this enormous restriction with regards to being able to socialize in groups. So it could be that you're kind of missing that, and that's why you're feeling restricted. So your seventh house is Rubeus. So this geomantic figure is associated with Mars in Scorpio. So this is the rulership of Scorpio before the discovery of Pluto. So Mars used to rule both Aries and Scorpio. And Scorpio was the night, sort of the nighttime domain of Mars. So this is Mars in its most sort of strategic or kind of secretive. And to have it in your seventh house can point to one of two things. It can mean a sort of a passionate connection with one other person, because the seventh house is usually significant long-term one-to-one relationships. So very often committed partnerships, marriages, or long-term business partnerships, for example. So there's some kind of intrigue possibly going on here if we are talking about a financial arrangement. Or if we're talking about a love relationship, we're talking about quite a passionate type of situation. Now, this isn't always necessarily a bad thing, but it can be toxic. So it can be a situation where you keep being drawn, you find it difficult to sort of leave a situation because there is this high drama associated with it. There's a lot of passion. It's quite exciting. There's in a way, it's sort of gets the blood pumping, but in other ways it may not necessarily be that healthy. So there could be some kind of manipulation. There could be plotting behind the scenes if this is to do with a financial arrangement, or a business partnership. So just something to be aware of. Interesting. So your 10th house, which is kind of your future direction, your focus going forward, your vocation, your sole purpose. We've got Fortuna Major now. We've got it in this geomantic figure is ruled by the Sun in Leo, which is your sun sign and your planet. So this is really fortunate to have in this particular position, which is about kind of recognition. It's about fame. It's about public office. It's about your public profile. Essentially, the whole upper part of a horoscope is about your relationship with the sort of social sphere or the public domain. So this points to either prominence, a promotion, basically fortune smiling on you when it comes to your career and with personal advancement. So that's really, really positive. So it's possible that with the Sun in Leo here, that you could, and especially if we pair it with populace, that it could be a sense of you becoming famous, that this is you, this is, where you're kind of headed, and the idea of crowds, it could be that you are becoming well known in the kind of public sphere, and that you're having to get used to the idea of, being talking in public or appearing in public, that kind of thing. But certainly this points to success and to expansion when it comes to your career and your career path. So I'm just quickly going to read you the keywords for Fortuna Major. It's possible also that Leo season is going to be important for you. That's when you have your solar return anyway, your birthday. So it could be that you're getting an extra dose of good luck from the universe. So Fortuna Major is great fortune, good luck, chance, power, effortless success, social mobility, winning disposition, victory, inner strength, and natural charisma. So as I said, this is really positive. It is the sun kind of culminating at midday, so it's really shining, kind of shining your light. And in a way, it kind of makes me think a bit about that supermoon in Leo that we had earlier in the year. I think it was around about February time when we had that supermoon in Leo. So you may also just want to go back and see whether something that seeds you planted then, or something that happened then, is linked to whatever happens during Leo season, so when the sun moves into Leo. But certainly it looks as though you're going to be getting help from people, from higher ups. There's going to be a bit of serendipity around your career, which is great, because we've got the sense of restriction or contraction in your personal life, but then all this expansion in your career. So perhaps this is also saying that is where your focus is going to be for the next 6 months. That you're not going to have as much time for family and for kind of being at home, and that you need to sort of be focusing on the outer world rather than the private domain. That may be why we're getting these two sun and moon in these particular positions. But I'm just going to pause the video quickly while I go and do the rest of the conversions, and I'll be back in a minute. Hi Leo, welcome back to your reading. I've done the geomantic conversions, and we now have all the cards in their correct positions. So let's dive further into your reading. So as I was saying, this eclipse will happen in your 12th house. So essentially what this means is that you're kind of undergoing a shift in your psyche. So there's kind of behind the scenes shifts happening for you that are kind of helping you to work through toxic patterns, to let go of potentially toxic relationships, because we do have Rubeus here in your 7th house, and we've got it repeated in your 12th house, which is where the eclipse is going to be. So it's possible that on some level you have become addicted to somebody who is quite destructive, or the dynamic between you is potentially a little bit destructive, and we certainly see it in your 2nd house too. So it's possible that it's either affecting your finances or it is affecting your self-esteem. You know, sometimes what happens is that when all our energy gets siphoned off through one particular channel, it means that we don't have the sort of energetic means to then generate, for example, abundance or other opportunities in our lives, you know, and particularly if you're dealing with some kind of energy vampire, which you could be, because we are talking about Scorpio here, and that energy kind of naturally is associated with kind of goth type of things. So things that go bump in the night, and sort of gothic stories like vampire stories and so on. No aspersions on Scorpio. I've got Scorpio placements myself. I'm just talking from a purely archetypal point of view. So it's possible that this eclipse is highlighting for you the need to shift past these toxic patterns, possibly, you know, those kind of compulsive relationships, those people that we can't quite seem to tear ourselves away from, or that keep coming back even though the dynamic never ends well. It can be very stormy and tempestuous, and that in and of itself, that drama we can kind of get addicted to. So it's possible that there is some connection that you know that this eclipse is highlighting for you that you need to let go of. You know, and very often what happens in these types of dynamic where you've got very high intensity energy is that our brain chemicals get addicted to the intensity, because it makes you feel very alive. So it's entirely possible that there is some dynamic. It could also be a financial partnership, because this is also, the 7th house can be, you know, business partners, and that it could be affecting your finances. There could be a bit of skullduggery going on, or some form of you know, cheating, fraud that you may not even be aware of, because this is Mars and Scorpio, which is strategic. It's almost that thief in the night. It's that energy of the 7 of Swords. You know, it's trying to get away with something that's, you know, the other person or the other party won't notice. So, you know, it's entirely possible that you don't know about it. It's kind of unconscious, but on some level you probably know, because you always feel drained, you never have energy, you never seem to have any money, or, you know, you just feel a little bit off balance. So I think that the eclipse is sort of drawing that to your attention, and saying that, you know, perhaps you need to just you let go of it, because we have got Cauda Draconis here in your, as one of your kind of outcome cards. And Draconis is about release, so it's about the south node, which is the tail of the dragon, and that tends to be associated with the lunar eclipse, which we've just had, but we're going to have another one after this solar eclipse in Capricorn. So it's possible that this is kind of leftover energy from the last 2 years, when we had all the eclipses in the signs of Cancer and Capricorn, that this is a kind of a lingering energy from that particular cycle. So just something to bear in mind, as I say, because we have got Rubeus repeated 3 times. So I really feel that, you know, when that happens, Spirit is trying to draw our attention to something. But then on the more positive side, it's interesting, we've got the opposite energy to Rubeus here, Albus. So this is white and this is red. If we want to talk about alchemical terms, we're talking about, this is kind of like Eros energy, so this is passion, and then Albus is the white sort of color that you often see in alchemical imagery. So this is kind of reason. So this is almost that detachment from your passions, those kind of compulsive energies that, on one hand can be inspirational, but on the other hand can almost overtake us and sort of become obsessive, or just push us out of balance, basically, so we don't feel in control anymore. There's these drives, these kind of animal drives almost, that are driving us rather than us being in control. So I think what it's saying to you is you need to kind of pull more into your head, and possibly get a little bit detached, because that will bring peace. That's the one thing we have to say about this type of energy, is there's no peace in it. It might be passionate, at times ecstatic, but very often where there are highs, there also happen to be lows. And so I think that you probably at this stage are feeling quite exhausted, and if you want peace, it may be time to sort of detach a little bit from this type of dynamic. Interestingly, we've got Albus repeated here in your 5th house, which is the house of passion and of sex, of new relationships, those kind of on again, off again people that we often never move into the 7th house, but we do have Rubeus here, so it's possible that it could also be a committed partner. It could be somebody that you have a sort of a romantic and a creative relationship with. But I think really what it's saying is that maybe for the sake of your kids, for the sake of your creativity, for your peace of mind, for your joy, to bring your joy back, because very often this is very tortured energy, this type of passion. It's quite extreme. So to kind of come back into balance, to come back into a place of peace and centeredness, and that this will help you to recover. So we could see this as, this is also the house of holidays. So it could be that you need a break from this energy. It could also be abusive. That's the other way that Mars in Scorpio can work. When Mars is negatively aspected, it can be the bully or the abuser. So that's just something else to bear in mind. And it doesn't necessarily have to be physical abuse. It could be emotional abuse. It could be financial abuse, psychological abuse as well, given that we've got this 12th house placement. And, one thing I have discovered for myself, and so have many people who've been in some form of narcissist empath dynamic or abusive situation, is that very often there is this unseen spiritual, sort of psycho-spiritual dynamic to the relationship, and until you manage to clear that, the person always manages to get back into your energetic field, into your head, and it's very difficult to then move on from that. It's quite it's almost like a kind of psychic possession. So you do, I think, have to treat it as such. And I think people like, Melanie Tony Evans will say that, that you need to treat it as more than just your common or garden relationship. You need to see it as actual, a problematic psychic connection that you actually need to do some cord cutting and psychic protection to keep this person out of your space, in your psychic space. So that's just something to bear in mind, because the 12th house and the 1st house, there is the sense of this is your kind of individual personality, and then this is the collective. And so very often this is about your psychological boundaries between what kind of constitutes your individual self, and then what opens your boundary up to everything else. So boundaries here are very important. So that's something just to bear in mind. And then, as I say, going back to Albus here, there is the sense of needing to bring peace, possibly for the sake of children, and that this peace seems to be associated with a kind of a release or a letting go. And it could, as I say, just be an energetic release from somebody that you may not actually be in contact with currently, but they're still in your energetic field, or they're still in your psychic space. So just something to bear in mind. But, you know, the great thing about this reading is that the outcome is very positive. So we've got Fortuna Minor in your outcome, or your judge position. So Fortuna Minor is almost the sort of the kind of minor chord, if you like, of Fortuna Major, which you've got here in your 10th house. So Fortuna Minor is usually about protection, interestingly enough. It's normally favors from higher-ups. It's you know, it can be psychic protection, and here I'm thinking about, you know, asking your guides and the Archangel Michael for help with psychic protection if you need it, and with cord cutting, because it certainly seems to be indicated here that if you do ask for help from, you know, authority figures, you will certainly receive the support and help that you need. But I'm just going to read you the keywords for Fortuna Minor, because of course, you know, that may not resonate with you at all. So let's just widen the net a little bit when it comes to you know, how this could work for people. So we've got fortunate circumstances, external protection, help from others, swift progress, unexpected shifts, and positive changes. So you know, it's a very positive geomantic figure. So, you know, I think if you need help in any way, do ask for it. Certainly, if we look at conjunctio, which is about union, about marriage in the sort of more metaphorical sense, this is where your spirit guides kind of reside. And I think it's saying, you know, kind of maybe get in a closer relationship with your spirit guides, because they are there and they're waiting to help you if you ask. So, you know, that's just something to bear in mind, kind of going forward. The other thing to say is that we've got Cast here repeated twice. So we've got it in your 4th house, but also in your 3rd house. So Cast, as I said, is about limitations or restrictions. So it could be that what this is saying is that, you know, this may be somebody that you've been living with, and this explains why you feel hemmed in. I mean, maybe they're quite controlling, this person, if you're kind of married to them or you live with them, and you don't feel you can kind of come and go as you please. And I think what it's saying here is that you may need to kind of go no contact. You may need to you know, potentially get yourself away from them, or somehow put up some kind of barrier so that you are you're more protected, both from a psychological point of view, because this is ideas, it's self-expression, it's communication, it's also your immediate neighborhood. So you know, these two things seem to be linked. So maybe you need to kind of get out of the area, for example, move away from this person, and or this dynamic, you know, it might also be that you've moved into a house that, you know, is haunted, or that has bad energy. That's another way that this could work. So that the sort of haunting is, it's, you know, it appears as an other, such as a, you know, a spirit or a ghost or that kind of thing, but it has more of a sort of psychological or psychospiritual dynamic to it. So that's just something else to bear in mind. But, you know, I think limitations, so less is more when it comes to Cast. It could be that self-discipline of not communicating, not sort of falling into the trap of when you're provoked, you know, kind of maintaining your equilibrium and just keeping your cool, so that you stay in a place of kind of peace and centeredness and balance. So as I said, that is quite specific. It's not going to resonate for everybody, but I hope you get the general sense that you know, there is good fortune to be had in terms of career, and from, you know, in terms of help from higher ups and VIPs and so on. But you need to kind of ask for it, particularly from friends. I think friends could be an enormous help, given that we've got Acquisitio here, which is about kind of gain and expansion. So I think good things for you in terms of your career. Relationships, you know, as I say, you may need to just take a step back from a dynamic if it's proving to be damaging or toxic. Get your equilibrium back when it comes to you know, creativity, joy, that kind of thing. Just get the balance back between passion and reason. And then I think the other thing to say is that a new cycle may be starting for you in work, health, and your everyday routine, which again may be linked to Kase here. Maybe that you are moving away from a place that wasn't particularly great for your mental health. Maybe you weren't able to sleep very well. There could be all sorts of reasons for that. Ley lines, because this can also be deep groundwater. When we've got Scorpio energy here, so it could also be that that there was too much negative energy because of ley lines, something of that ilk. But I do feel that there needs to be an energy clearing, a release of some kind. You'll probably know more what it is, and I think you would have got hints about it certainly in January when we had the lunar eclipse in Cancer. That's kind of south node energy, and it pertains to your 12th house. So that can kind of give you a little prompt to sort of think back to that time to see whether anything was sort of circulating for you. And then yes, as I say, ask for help if you need it. Follow conventional wisdom when it comes to kind of navigating your life, and yes, open yourself up to the bounty that is waiting for you, particularly when you get in alignment with your soul purpose. So I hope that's been helpful. As I say, I will be doing some video horoscopes for each of the zodiac signs on my website, so sign up if you are interested in those. And otherwise, I'm going to be doing a forecast for the collective on my Instagram IGTV channel, so that's something else to look forward to. But I'm wishing you all the best for the solar eclipse and the solstice, and I'll catch you for my next Geoscope, which will be in a couple of weeks when we do the lunar eclipse in Capricorn.